I tried to prevent my hairline and my hair from further degenerating with mostly these 3 products during the last 1.5 years. So first of all, I noticed that my hairline began to change somewhat. So here began to appear kind of a see-through line. So it was higher and higher. Also, if I wear a cap, it seems that I already have kind of a large forehead. Also, if you take a look on the side and on this side, then it already became visible. Now it is somewhat fine, I would say. It is almost very close to actually what it looked a few years ago. Nonetheless, I still will continue to do all of these things. So first of all, I saw a few videos online where people talked about devices like this, which is a microneedling or a derma pen. So this is a microneedling device, or also called derma pen. What this is small needles, and these pierce into your skin. Now, as they pierce into your skin and your skin regenerates, this seems to positively impact the hair growth to some extent. And now this is one of the main things. Now, you also have a few medical options. The 2 main ones are finasteride. So these are actually proper drugs, basically. There are also other options, such as rosemary oil and maybe pumpkin seed oil. I also tried pumpkin seed oil for a little bit, but it also costs 5 or 6 euros, and also this costs a little bit. But the pumpkin seed oil actually dyes your hair to a certain extent. You might have seen Brian Johnson, for example, who has somewhat very dark hair, who seems to not have that dark hair without it, at least, or from pictures before he began to basically treat his hair in some way. Now, what I'm trying to say with this is that it alters your hair color, and also you have then oily hair all day long. Now, there also have been a few people online saying, okay, minoxidil makes my hair kind of weird, but I have noticed not this so much. More on the other side, I would say, that it actually is kind of similar to a styling product, where it actually makes your hair, if you, for example, slick it back, then it stays a little bit more like this. Now, I also have to, so maybe I just mention my current procedure as I do this, and then I detail what the history of these procedures was. Now, first of all, I do the microneedling, and I currently do it at 1 millimeter. So there are different depths you can have by rotating this here. This goes up, so this pen specifically, this might not be with your pen. There are also other things that are not in a pen form. There are also these rollers, but what I have heard is, or what at least people on the internet said, is that if you have this roller and then you roll it over your hair, then it also might actually cut your hair. I don't know if it cuts that much hair with this, but I didn't see any hair falling out more than it used to, and also more than it did in the past, which was kind of the main incidence. Now, there also has to be said something about this incidence, but maybe first back to this device. Now, I have been using the 2 millimeters, or I at least thought I have been using the 2 millimeters, but what turns out was that the needles themselves, because they are so thin, and because I just have used them until they basically were eroded, so basically they became less 2 millimeters, so they basically began to disappear into powder, probably. And because of this, I therefore then increased the needle depth to still use this. And I then saw at one point that this head was completely flat, but because it happened so marginally over time, I didn't notice, so I just took this, and well, I didn't have any needle depth at all in the end any longer. So then I exchanged this head. This actually came with 20 heads like this, but I just decided to use the first one. And actually, I don't know if it says the explanation that you should switch it out every single time, but I, of course, am kind of using them until they are used up, basically. So now what I'm doing is I'm turning this on. This has five different levels, and this pen seems to be kind of the most effective out of these 3, and also kind of the cheapest option out of these 3. So in terms of cost effectiveness, this seems to be kind of the best. So now if it is on 1 millimeter, and it also seems to make sense to have it only once weekly. I tried having it multiple days, but your hair And also mostly your skin also needs to regenerate. Your hair not so much because it's already kind of dead, similar to your fingernails. Now you just take this and then you basically run it through the scalp. Now you also might have basically a deeper needle depth. Now if you have a deeper needle depth, what I noticed is that you might, so if you have a certain amount of time and you need to cover this area, for example here, which might be, maybe my scalp is half of this or 3/4 of this area, then if I have less of a needle depth, then I can go a little bit faster because it doesn't stick to the skin too much, because it doesn't pierce into the skin too much. So I'd rather, I think, cover the whole area kind of more evenly compared to having a higher depth or a bigger depth and covering it more unevenly. That's kind of the thinking. And I also need to increase the needle depth anyway, as the needles then decrease in height. So that is kind of the thinking. I usually do this also kind of in the morning nowadays, especially now with the scalp. I can do it in the morning. And this is mostly what I'm talking about. Now, I also have been experimenting, and there seems to be some evidence behind this, with using this pen in order, so basically using this pen on the rest of my skin. So if it works somewhat on the scalp and it rejuvenates the skin, or rather the hair follicles, then why not using it? Why not try to get rid of a few birthmarks? So I've tried this, and in the beginning I did it every couple of days, and also I didn't know, but I basically had the maximum needle depth, and then I basically ran it usually 10 times. So back and forth 10 times like this, once, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So basically not 10 times into both directions, but only 10 times counting each direction. Now, I've actually noticed, at least a little bit, that they seem to decrease in the color. So basically they seem to lighten up a bit. But once you do this, then they also seem to be kind of more on the reddish side. So there could be an effect that the red is just covering kind of up the other, and therefore it might seem lighter, because the red and the brown combined might seem lighter. I don't know specifically. Up until this point in time, I haven't gotten rid of any of them. But a few smaller ones, for example, like this, they seem to sometimes be a little bit lighter. And also, I don't really know any longer. I took a few pictures before, but I haven't reduced anything to 0. If I, for example, would be able to reduce this here to 0, and it would be completely invisible, then this would be maybe a success. But it is just something that I am trying out, and maybe it is basically going 1% by 1% by 1%. Maybe after 5 years of doing this weekly, maybe it has changed. I think it already is a little bit lighter, but I don't know specifically if it is just a perceptual effect, and if it is actually lighter. So much about this pen. I use it once a week. I ran it through basically all of my scalp that is covered in hair. I also am running it now on my birthmarks, and also on basically, oh, this would be something. So this is, I actually did this 1 or 2 days ago, and this now, and also you can see kind of where the skin has been targeted by going back and forth. But this is, for example, fairly light already. Now this is also fairly small, but this is also already fairly light. And these are just, of course, very small, but well, they seem to at least somewhat disappear. But have been doing this only for a couple of weeks, maybe months, maybe more on the months side, maybe 3 to 6 months on the skin. Now, just as the depth of the needle or the height of the needles might disappear, my ability to speak continuously with prolonged video time might also disappear. Now the next thing is minoxidil. I began to take it in about 1.5 years ago now, 1 year and 4 to 5 months. I then had to pause it in between due to a medical reason where I had to reduce basically anything I took in order to see what caused something. And therefore I did have it decreased. Now what I might draw is a very small graph. Now there is also something that I have to mention, and what I have to mention is that I basically did never take it up to the dose where it is recommended, or what is recommended. So it is recommended that you have it 2 times in a given day. I also have to mention maybe this is called Regain, which is just this this name, which is otherwise Rogaine. So it depends on country by country what it is called. So now, if you take 2 times daily the 1 cap, which is basically the cap that sits on here, it's a small cap, and if you fill it up, I think half, then it's 1 gram of what is in there. Now, if you have this 1 gram, then this would be the dose that is recommended 2 times in a day. So it would be 2 grams daily. Now, I usually try to shower only once in a given day, but in summer I sometimes do additional cold exposures, so I shower cold basically, or I also go into a lake or something like this. Then, if you go into a lake or you do an additional workout and you shower afterwards because you sweat in summer and you don't want to sleep sweaty, then basically you're taking this away. Now, if you wouldn't shower at all, then you would have the accumulative effect of this being in your hair. But if you wash it out every time you shower, then basically it only lasts for a couple of hours. In my case now, I try to reduce, basically, I try to really only have my hair wet once, and then I apply this afterwards. So currently this is the morning workout, and then I apply this afterwards. I also apply this afterwards on the day on which I microneedle, and I also changed the microneedling to the morning specifically for the reason that it would then be basically, so now a side effect of microneedling in the morning compared to the evening is that in the next 8 hours, for example, when you actually would be sleeping, when you do it in the evening, that your skin already would be able to recover. Whereas if you do it in the morning, then you go out and you might touch your scalp and you might touch something else, then this might get inflamed to a higher chance, probably. But the benefit is then if I take the minoxidil in the gym, then the scalp is somewhat opened up, and so the minoxidil probably goes at this day specifically when I do the microneedling once a week. It might go into the different cells or into the skin and basically get to the cells a little bit better compared to the other days. So I don't take the half cap. Why? Because mostly this is expensive. There also seems to be some side effects that have been reported. I did not notice any side effects. It could be that it has side effects and I just didn't notice them. But, well, there also seems to be this effect where maybe the hair sheds. So minoxidil seems to work in the following way. That you have a growth phase and you have a phase at which the hair doesn't grow, and then I think eventually also falls out, or some hairs fall out. So the first phase and the second phase. And minoxidil seems to work by extending the phase in which the hair, and maybe on average all of the hair, grow compared to the rest. So if this is before maybe, then this is with minoxidil. So you have basically more growth over a given period of time. And the third product I have been using is this here. This is an inlay for a cap. So I bought this as a cap. There are also caps which have this basically combined with the cap. But this came with a cap that is actually a little bit bigger in terms of the size, because this also has to fit in. Now I did use the cap because I like the cap also normally, also working out in the gym, and I just did not put this in. But the problem then was that this got that I lost this. And so I now have a different cap, and I also now use this slightly differently. So what I figured is that it is for the most part very important that this here is covered. Now what this is a red light basically thing here. It emits red light, and red light is also said to also there seems to be some evidence behind this, that if you apply this to your scalp, that this increases hair growth at least. Now this lasts for exactly 10 minutes once I press this button, and to turn it off I just press it along. There are also different modes, so there also seems to be some effect of blue light, not specifically on the hair maybe, but I'm not sure about the blue light on the hair. But what you could do potentially is, and this is something I thought about, maybe to stimulate basically, so there is this mode in which it switches. Now what I also have for this, that basically this is kind of a blue light and a red light thing. So what I could potentially do, and first of all, this is now the use I do for preventing my hair decline. I put this on and I now have this slightly below, because otherwise there is also this line here, and ideally I want the red light to at least hit this area, because this is kind of the most important area, and also probably the area in which my hair regresses, and also this spot in the back, but it probably doesn't cover this because it's not that big. So I take this and then I usually have it down a little bit. Now, if the red light hits your eyes, there might be a kind of calming effect, which might not be ideal in the morning and also might tinker with the circadian rhythm. It looks utterly ridiculous. I know. But I didn't find another way. I didn't get another cap, so that's what I'm working with. I only have this on for 10 minutes, and then I just take the inlay out, and then I usually have the cap on for then doing my workout in the morning. Now, this turns off automatically, which also acts as a timer for other things, which I also have for 10 minutes in the morning. Now, I don't know if this has any effect. This seems to have two effects. The first one is that if I have this in my hair, then immediately, and this is not due to the compound effect of this, immediately, probably because I figured that this company probably has something to gain to make your hair seem fuller immediately once you apply this, in order to not have to rely on the compounding effect that might take weeks to months to kick in to make people realize, oh, this product is useful. So what I have been seeing is, and I think this is, obviously this is just my anecdotal evidence here. If I apply this, and previously before, so the last couple of months, so I had to stop taking also minoxidil. So I took minoxidil, didn't take it for a couple of months. And then once I applied it, basically already after I applied it within seconds, of course there is no effect. Apart from the effect that it might, what it probably does is it might make your hair stick together a little bit more. So if here you see through, if this would be my hair and this would be my scalp underneath, then you could see through like this, but it makes it seem at least as if these are sticking more together and they seem somewhat fuller if I have minoxidil in my hair, which is usually the case because I apply it once a day. What I also now have to mention is that I only take 1/4 of the dose. So the recommended dose is 2 grams in a given day, 2 grams of this here. And I only take half a cap once a day instead of 2 caps, 2 half caps twice a day. And so therefore the cost of taking minoxidil is, if you take the full dose, 20 euros in this case per bottle. And a bottle lasts almost exactly, I think, 1 month. Now, the bottle has 60 grams in it. If you take 2 grams of it twice a day, it lasts exactly for 30 days. So by reducing it by 1/4, this bottle now lasts for 4 times as long, meaning this bottle lasts for now 4 months, which would be 1/4, and it sells also in a 3-pack, which means that one 3-pack, which costs 60 euros, then lasts me for a year instead of 1/4 of the year, which I think is reasonable. So it's, of course, then if you divide this by 60 again, then you have the cost of 5 euro of this per month, which is still adding up. It's like all of these other supplements, which also are like 25 euros for 3 months or something like this. And then it is a couple of euros in a month. But at least what this does is, or did, is, for example, I recently visited my parents and I told them a little bit about my hair falling out like 2 years ago, now almost, well, 1.5 years ago. And I said, it doesn't even look different, which I think is a very good upside, because it did very much, at least in my view, look different. And I for months did not really know if this was just me thinking about, okay, I have seen people talking about this, and now I also take a look at my hairline, and this is just increased attention towards this problem that actually made me realize that maybe I didn't have that great hair all through my youth and so on and so forth. But I eventually realized that, or I at least decided that this was probably something that has been progressing, and I should do something against this, because if I then in 10 years in 10 years do see a visible difference and I did not do anything. And this is a pen that I bought for 30 or 50 euros, and all the cartridges that came with it, or the things that came with it, were included. So this cost me 50 euros at this point in time. The minoxidil costs 5 euros a month. I already have reduced this to 5 euros, and otherwise it would be, I think, too expensive and not make sense, because I could use the remaining 15 euros at least otherwise. And this red light cap, I think, cost 30 euros, and this inlay is now something I use once a day. And so, of course, it is something additional. If you do things and you layer things, and then, yeah, well, it adds up, of course, but I don't want to be bald, and so I try to prevent it. So these are the 3 things I do. Now, maybe a little bit of the backstory, which is probably not interesting to anybody. I did see more and more, basically mostly in the front here, not in the back, but you could see through. And you also could see through in videos, and I saw this also when seeing myself on screen. And the sides, I don't know if the sides have improved or not improved. I actually have now a somewhat weird hairline where it goes down and up and down and up. I don't know if there is now additional hair, but the hair also, since I only began taking minoxidil 2 months ago, approximately. And the microneedling I have been doing all through this time, because the microneedling it's not anything I take. It's just basically, it probably didn't have an effect on the medical issue I had. And so I did microneedling all the way. I also did red light all the way. And the minoxidil is now only 2 months, so it probably didn't alter my hairline, because then if new hairs actually would have grown, and also from microneedling, a friend of mine actually also now has started this, and before he was like, oh no, I don't do this, because this is superficial, and I don't know. He didn't say this specifically, he just had some reason, and I just made up some reason now. And so if this would have had an effect, then the hair grows with 1 centimeter per month, so it could not be any hair that is so long. So if it had an effect, then this hair basically is almost 1 year of hair growth, because it's longer than 12 centimeters. So these hairs are not hairs that could have been grown during this period, and they would have to be, because my top hair is so long, any hair that is basically here would have to be shorter than this, and would be at maximum 12 centimeters. So I did have a period in which so I did have long hair before, longer hair, up to here or up to here at max, I think. I grew it only out once. And so more and more hair began to fall out. Now, if a hair is longer and it's twice as long, and the hair falls out and you take all the hairs, then it's twice as much volume as if you would have half the hair length. Now, this is one effect. The second thing, I think, is that there is additional stress, because the hair, if it is twice as long, is also twice as heavy on a given hair follicle. There also might be additional stress. And I also noticed that my scalp usually was quite tight in many areas. Now, there also is an emerging theory, and this is not so much scientifically proven, that the areas which are under more stress seem also to be the areas where the hair falls out, and these seem to be these areas and also these areas to some extent or for some reason. And so by reducing the stress, this might potentially help the issue. Now, I cut off the hair mostly for this reason. I also wanted to see whether my hair would return to baseline. I also just was annoyed by the long hair. I just wanted to try it out once. And also, of course, medium length hair has its downsides, such as many things, but what also has happened, I think, is, and this might have been a stress-induced hair falling out. Now, this can happen, so the 2 phases of hair growth actually the proportions might change depending on how much stressed you are. So this could also be that your hair is falling out for 2 or 3 months, because you basically have now a shortened anagen phase, which I think is the growth phase, and the other phase, I don't know what it is called. Maybe it's also the other way around. And so by having extended falling out phase in which the hair doesn't grow, there might be on average more hair that is basically falling out compared to the baseline. So the hair falling out might just be due to this effect and not so much a big sign, because the androgenic alopecia, which is the name for male pattern hair loss, it's kind of the same, is probably not one thing that is happening, but it is rather marginally happening over a long period of time, and then this might also bring up the problem that you only begin to see it through the years, basically once it's too late. And so there seems to be a consensus with a few people I saw online who made videos that you probably want to prevent hair loss as long as you can, or basically, if my hair would be at a certain stage, at a certain age, then by doing this, I probably get it back. I basically extend the phase in which it is not in that state. So if the state would be 50% of my hair has been falling out, which probably is not very likely for me, due to genetics, probably I don't have. But there also are some people who are close to bald in my family who are, I don't know. What I'm trying to say is that if this is time, and also maybe I wanted to plot, I wanted to plot my minoxidil use. First of all, minoxidil use only up to the point. In the beginning, I think I did take it as recommended, but then I have stagnated. So if this is the 2 grams recommended, then in the beginning I took the 2 grams recommended for a couple of weeks, actually probably only, and then I reduced it due to the high cost, and then I reduced it to 0, and now I'm back to the 0.5 grams, so something like this. Now, what I wanted to say is that if you hair over time, and let's just say it's a certain area that has hair, let's just say it's the density of hair in a certain area. So 1 square centimeter, for example, how much hair is in this centimeter? In the beginning, you have all of your hair, so this is the max. And then at a certain age, let's say it's age 50, you would only have half of the hair. So this would be the hair half-life, where basically half of the hair, similar to these other processes with half-life, would be gone. So it would be here. Now, if we just assume a linear regression in this case, or progression of the loss, it would look like this. Now, what anything that has any positive effect might be doing as a cumulative effect, just simplified, might be that it has basically the effect of putting this into this direction. So this line might be basically prolonged and look like this. Now you could also see it as moving up or into this direction, which in this case it doesn't really matter, because obviously the line goes all the way, and so you actually could move it to the right or up. But this, I think, makes sense to a certain extent. So what I'm trying to do is try to, okay, I have at a certain age, a certain hairline, or a certain hair density, and I try to basically push this point into the future by doing something now actively.